Hello and welcome to the No One Asked You podcast. For this particular series, I am once again joined by my wonderful co-host, that darn Kitty.
Dorkus and I are sharing our experience reading The Way of Kings for the first time. Each episode we will summarize what we've read and discuss the experience along the way.
This is Storming the Archives, The Way of Kings, and today we discuss the Prologue.
The Prologue!
Szeth, son Volano, truthless of Shinovar, has been ordered to assassinate a king. He sits at a banquet, celebrating a peace treaty between the Parshendi and the Alethi. The Alethi are civilized, and the Parshendi are savages. The night is late, and most are drunk or dancing to Parshendi drums. Szeth makes his way through the feasting hall to the Beggar's Feast, where he passes by 9 statues of the 10 heralds. He notes the oddity of the missing herald, as King Gavilar is said to have been devout in Vorin worship. Though not all the names of the heralds are mentioned, the names Ishi and Talenalat bring the names Ishar and Talanel to mind from the previous chapter. The Parshendi told Szeth to be seen killing the king, so using stormlight siphoned from nearby light sources, he begins lashing guards on his way to the king's chamber. The guards don't recognize the stormlight abilities, but they do recognize Szeth's shard blade. Eventually, Szeth sees a man, the king, being ushered out by soldiers. A bodyguard in shardplate armor appears. The two fight. Szeth is obligated to fight in earnest, but welcomes the prospect of death. Szeth, fearing the king might escape, chases after the king, leaving the man in shardplate armor, only to realize the king he saw was a body double, a bait and switch. The real king was the armored man he had been fighting. The two fight, with Szeth ultimately coming out on top. The king expected someone to attempt an assassination, but he's confused to hear it was the Parshendi that had sent someone. Not Thadakar, not Restores, not Sadeas. The king gives Szeth a small crystalline sphere, saying that they must not get it, that Szeth must tell his brother to find the most important words a man can say. A dying request is sacred to Szeth, so using the king's bloodied hand, he leaves the message for the king's brother. Finally, leaving the king's shard blade behind, Szeth escapes into the night. And that is the prologue.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, that's a lot.
That is a lot. So much coolness for us to go through. Magic system introduced, used, all over the place. Also, for me, connecting it to Mistborn has been difficult not to do.
Very much so. Same. So my experience reading this chapter, I'm definitely feeling that barrier to entry that folks have referenced. There were way more names and way more terms in this first chapter. And it made it such that the very first time that I read this chapter, I really struggled in the first half. But by the time Szeth got into his fight with the man in Stormplate, I got really into it. When I went back to read it a second time, now knowing a bit more about Szeth and his personality and being just a touch more familiar with all the terms, I found it much easier to read a second time. What do you think?
Yeah, my second read through was a lot better as well. I had the exact same experience where it was like, okay, I'm trying to take down who's who, and because you're learning about all these, there's all these key terms, just Parshendi and all of that, and you're like, okay, trying to remember this. Oh, and we also have an epigraph sort of thing, and there's so many questions about that. So the first experience was a lot of questions, and then just going through it again. Maybe this is just the way we're doing it. Going through it again was a lot more enjoyable. Yeah, I like having read it twice though.
Yeah, it definitely helped, and it was good to be certain. It was just that first time it was like terms.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, oh my gosh, okay, what's the Stormfather? What's the Everstorm? What is Truthless? You know, there are so many things that you have to try, and I'm like, oh, I've got to remember it. So that's what I maybe that's the thing that on the first read, I'm like, why must I'm like stuck trying to remember it, as opposed to just being in the moment and just reading it. I'm trying to pick up every single detail. I'm trying to go, wait, which name relates to the preview thing? That like
Yes, and we'll get to that.
Bad thing. Yeah.
Also noteworthy, I forgot to mention it in the summary. This is now 4,500 years later.
Yep. That is a long time. That's 2 Christs time. God,
yes.
Yeah.
I'm getting Sazed vibes from Zeth and the Shin in that they are viewed as servants and docile, but Zeth is very much a fighter, whereas Sazed is not.
Yes, I was going to say that when I read that in your notes, I was like, yeah, I agree in terms of just the fact that there is a certain race or a certain type of person that is Sazed vibes, but when it comes to that fight, it's he also even enjoys the fight. He likes the challenge. So
yeah,
that was cool.
There were a lot of mysteries brought up in this chapter, and I think we'll make our way through the bulk of them. But the first one being, I want to know why the Parshendi would break their peace immediately, the night of.
Yeah. And for me, I'm like, now I say Seth, because it just seems like Seth. So I'll try and keep Seth in mind.
Yeah. I'll probably switch to Seth because my instinct is to go with Seth. So for the time being, I'll switch to Seth.
Well, I don't know. The Z's there. So it'll be fun. Zeth. Let's go. Zeth. Say both of them. Zeth together. But yes, I don't know why they would break the pizza. He doesn't even know why, but he's just been told to do it.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, what about him makes him? I guess he's got masters, and also, okay, well, we'll get to it because I'm just like, one of the mysteries from the previous thing was, who are the Radiants? Is he a Radiant? He's Radiant. The word Radiant is used in connection with him. So
entirely possible, but I struggle to imagine the Knights Radiant as being subservient. I mean, they sounded like paladins, not docile servants to me. In
4,500 years can do a lot of stuff. Who knows?
That's true. That is true. So the 10 heralds, we got 2 names that stuck out to me, Ishi and Telenolot, which obviously Telenolot sounds like Talenel or Toln. We heard both those names in reference to the same person in the prelude. And then Ishi is sort of close to Ishar, or Ishar, who is mentioned in the previous chapter as well. And we know that there were 10 of the squad from the first chapter, yeah?
Yeah, the heralds. We know there were 10 of them. And in the first chapter, he did say King of the Heralds. The Jezrien was a King of the Heralds.
Yes.
So we know that.
Interesting how these names shift. And it makes sense that they would shift, assuming these are the same people. I don't see why they wouldn't be. But
yeah, it seems like that's what we're supposed to take from this. There was also Shalash. I wrote that there. I don't know if it was mentioned in this, because there was one statue missing from this display. Interesting.
Yes. What does that mean? What did King Gavilar? What was his name?
Gavilar. Yeah, I thought it was Galavar. I kept saying it in my head, Galavar. I'm like, it's Gavilar. So that's the only reason I know.
Excellent. So, like, what is that relationship with the missing herald? And what's really interesting is because one might almost think that if there were to be a missing herald, it would be Talenel, right?
Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah. But actually, he's the one that's still there. The other heralds, actually, I guess, no, wait, they're still there. The other heralds are supposed to still be in this world because they just go, okay, Talenel, whatever, he's supposed to have gone back to hell and then been brought back. So he's actually is the one that's supposed to be missing. Never mind. But, it's a great mystery. I'm enjoying it.
Agreed. By the way, the Spren are all really freaking cool.
Yeah, okay. So did you make any relations with Mistborn and Spring?
No.
Okay, because I
Did
was
you?
thinking, I like the idea that when you are rioting or soothing, you're affecting the spren that come from someone.
That's neat.
Yeah, I like like, I'm not saying it is exactly related, but I just thought of just these magic systems touching on each other, and I really enjoyed that idea that the spren. So like when you're rioting somebody's emotions, you're taking those spren and multiplying them, and when you're soothing them, you're taking the spren away. So that I enjoyed that kind of connection.
Neat. See, what I like about them is they're colorful. Everything about this world is so colorful and magical. And the Spren just, there's something almost druidic or fey realm about them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but also what I wanted to know is, is speaking of the world, is this the way it looks to everyone or just to someone like Seth?
Uh, I would have imagined everyone, but it could be Seth.
Because what I'm seeing is like he's seeing the spren. I don't know if they can see the spren. That's it's not confirmed to me. I don't think.
We'll find out in the future, I'm
Mhm.
sure.
Yeah.
What did you think of Assassins Wear White?
Yeah, it was interesting. It is white is rather easy to see, but that was the whole tradition, is that you need, the least that you can do is let someone know you're coming for them, basically.
Right.
That was the reasoning. But that does make me wonder, it's not exclusively just for assassins, it's just anyone that wears white. I mean, I'm saying anyone can wear white. It's not, doesn't necessarily mean you are an
An
assassin.
assassin.
Yeah, the Venn diagram. Okay, they cross over.
Sure.
Yeah.
Like, I like the world building of it, but I'm struggling to get past the practical nature of announcing yourself. You're not really an assassin then, are you? You're something else.
You're a challenger. You're
A
that's why
challenger, yeah.
yeah, that's why when I looked at it again, when I read it through it again, I'm like trying to see if there's anything that makes it clear that he's the only one that's wearing white.
Hmm.
But it's not. It's not that. And servants wear white. Servants can wear white. So it doesn't necessarily, it's not necessarily a signal, but it is as well.
Yeah.
So yeah,
It's
it
cool.
was interesting. Yeah, it's
It's
cool.
definitely cool.
Mm. Speaking of cool, shard blades
Shard blades are so cool.
and lightning sorcerer.
Seth is a lightning sorcerer. That's not the technical term, but like you take light and you can basically cast lightning spells.
Mhm. Also, just going into the Wheel of Time influence, the way that he describes the way this power feels in him, it actually feels very Wheel of Timey to me. When you channel, literally the one power sometimes is spoken about as channeling the light, and he also uses light with a capital L. I really appreciate that. Obviously, it's not like, oh look, he's talking about the Wheel of Time. It's just having a little flavor of Wheel of Time in there, obviously, that I enjoy.
Nice. I like the holding breath of it to keep it in.
Yeah. Well, he has to hold his breath. Others, well, I don't know. It because it leaks from him. It can only be used. Sanderson likes this sort of timed cooldown kind of magic,
Yeah.
that you need resources for it. It loses itself. You know, it's not endless. That's a big difference between his power and the Wheel of Time one power.
So then you've also got the lashings. You've got the basic lashing. You can change up to down and down to up.
So cool.
That's very cool. The things you can
So
do with that.
cinematic.
Then you've got the full lashing, which is you can pull objects together. Yeah?
Yeah.
And then you've got the reverse lashing, which is like bullet time, where you touch an object and that becomes the center of gravity.
Yeah, pulls certain things towards it. Yes, it's very cool. It makes for very cool fighting. and would make for great visuals or difficult visuals, however you want to characterize it.
Yeah.
We also get some other world building. There is such things as light eyes versus dark eyes. Light eyes presumably are allowed to have swords. Dark eyes don't. He encounters people that have dark eyes, and they are not allowed the sword. So there's some world building there for you.
Excellent world building.
Mm-hmm.
Back to the shard blades for a second. Seth's shard blade is smaller than most others. And Seth is also, at least in this chapter, small and overlooked, an innocuous, unnoticed servant. So I like to imagine that the fact that his shard blade is smaller is sort of a manifestation of Seth's essence, so to speak, like a literary connection there.
Yeah, it's like a piece of his soul, or it depends on who you are. That's what your shard blade would look like.
Not necessarily. It sounds like anyone can pick up anyone else's shard blade or steal it or something when the owner dies. I just mean from a purely literary perspective.
That's the connection you've made, yeah. Also, just speaking of which, the distinction that I noticed and just made sure of, in the previous chapter, when the swords would disappear when the master died. That's what he said. Here, the sword did not disappear. The swords just it just clanked to the ground. It actually appeared after he died. So it's different to those kinds of blades that are shown there.
Excellent notice. Yeah, that's important. Ooh, my mind is racing on that one now. Maybe the reason it disappears for the heralds is because they're supposed to come back eventually, but that's not the case with humans, maybe?
Yeah, something that it means something.
Voidbringers sound scary.
Yes, and Voidbringers, that was a difference as well. Voidbringers can keep their charge, I suppose. They don't leak it. They can use it all, I suppose. They're different. I've got here, where is it? Voidbringer. Oh, so I was wondering, are Voidbringers thunderclasts? That's my question, my note there.
Maybe.
Yeah. Also,
I don't know.
We're talking about Seth being religious. Walking on stone for him is profane.
Yeah, that was a big thing.
And in the beginning, those herald thingies, they were walking on stone, no problem.
Yep. I want to call out Seth wanting to die, or at least welcoming death, should it come. That contrasts distinctly with "but I survived." So a theme is potentially being set up here about survival.
Yeah, and versus wanting to die. Also versus punishment, because he did, or staying alive as punishment, dying as punishment. Just punishment, the theme of punishment is associated with this. Did you know? Yeah. Did you get that? Because he says like his punishment won't allow something like that, and it feels like that is, there's some sort of connection that he's got. He's not allowed to kill himself, and that is part of his punishment. He has to die in certain service.
Yeah, that's very interesting, especially if there's some punishment coming for the heralds.
According to legend, the shard blades were first carried by the Knights Radiant uncounted ages ago. Gifts of their god, granted to allow them to fight horrors of rock and flame, dozens of feet tall, foes whose eyes burned with hatred, the Voidbringers. When your foe had skin as hard as stone itself, steel was useless. Sometimes something supernal, whatever. Just that was one of the things that you said for Voidbringers. We've got shard plates. We haven't spoken about shard plate.
Shard plate's cool.
Yeah. It's like a sort of mech suit, but not. It's powered by the
having to hit it in the same place twice.
That reminded me of Dune with their shields.
Me too.
Okay, I was wondering if it was, because it just made me think of that has to be hit in a certain way several times. for it to eventually pierce. It's not completely impenetrable, but yeah, you've got to keep going to get at it. I'm just trying to find this punishment highlight. He had heard that the Voidbringers could hold it imperfectly, but then, did they even exist? His punishment declared that they didn't. His honor demanded they did. So I'm like, what do you mean by that? Because his punishment declared they didn't. So that his punishment is that he still exists, I suppose, and there's none of them to kill anymore. But his honor demanded that they did. So it's like, that's his purpose. His purpose is to fight the Voidbringers. So I'm just like, what is his punishment? His punishment is existence? I don't know. It was just a very poignant line for me.
Yeah, I want more.
Mm-hmm.
I loved the bait and switch with the king.
Yes, that was great. And the way that he figured it out was also very satisfying. It's just like, uh-oh. And then he followed his instincts to go after what he had realized was the king. And this king was apparently quite a blade master. That was pretty cool. Too bad he's dead now.
Yeah, makes you think this king is very, very cool. Too bad he's gone.
Yeah, like, oh, damn, man. I was liking him. But also this king, very important note there, the king did not expect this to be his assassin. He was expecting other people to come. He literally says, I thought you would come. And then it's like, actually, no, I'm not who you thought was coming. Bait and switch. Yes. Also, going into the fight scene. So we have the mech armor thingy we were just discussing. Well, I call it a mech, but I don't know how it's supposed to. I have not looked up any of the imagery because I just want it to be experienced as pure as possible for as long as I can. Have what is in my mind, and then be influenced by what other people have seen later on, including be influenced by what Brandon Sanderson himself has approved. But also there is some sort of healing that can happen. It takes hours, but the light is healing, has healing properties. So we have a jaw that's going to be mended.
Yep.
But there is a lot of pain from being punched by one of those shard thingies. And apparently, they are supposed to go together. You're supposed to have a shard plate and a shard blade, but he doesn't care for it. So that's another thing that makes him a bit weird. Small.
Well, they interfere with each other.
Yeah, that's true. He does say that. So it's like he has to make the choice whether they use it or not. And he's like, no, he would rather do lashings than be free of lashings, because you can't do a lashing to a shard plate.
Right.
There's a certain mechanic that you actually have to unstrap them, basically, take them out of it, something like that. That's like finally defeating it, in my opinion. But yeah.
And then there's that line as the king is dying, at least you won't have to watch the world ending with the rest of us.
Yeah, he's
world ending.
Yeah, the world's ending apparently. And yeah, there's this weird. Well, I guess Seth doesn't really care to live, but he's just continuing. He knows stuff. I hope we get more of him. I don't know if this is a prologue, so do we just not know anything about him going forward? He's not the character that we're going to be with. I have no idea, no expectation, just can't wait to read.
Agreed. And I loved everything about that last scene with Seth and the king. Dying words being sacred is very cool lore and world building.
Do you think he did enough? Sorry.
Do you think
he did enough for that?
Depends how cleanly it was written and whether or not it'll be blown away by dust or rain or something. No, I think it'll be enough.
He did what he could. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because he's the assassin. What's he gonna do? Mm-hmm. Go fight his way over to the king's brother to give the message?
True.
But he takes the chain thing, ball thing.
Yes. And it's dark as well. Yeah. It's like a dark light. It's not the same as, because he it seems like he keeps spheres of stormlight that he might use, but he doesn't need to use it. There's just lamps and things that he uses. He takes charge from, which is cool. again, just reminding me of Mistborn having that resources-based power that you have to take from somewhere. You have to take it into yourself. Yeah.
Do you think the most important words a man can say is connected to the Oath Pact?
I suppose it does. I mean, what are the most important words? An oath, yeah, because words are binding in an oath. It has to be related in some way, not to the Oath Pact itself, maybe, but to an oath. That's as close as I can get it.
Yeah.
Great amount of action in the chapter, and cannot wait to get to the next one.
Yeah.
Are there any predictions or anything like that you want to go through? I'm just more like, yay, fun.
Yeah, it's still a bit early, other than to say that I think whatever we got in the prelude wasn't permanent, and I think it's now starting to unravel.
Yes, in the main thing that one of the notes is that this won't bind him. He'll find a way around it. That was in the prelude. So that whatever bound him then, it's gone now. So the world is ending because of that. This enemy that was bringing desolation. We're heading for another one, I'd say.
Yeah. And it sounds like Seth knows.
Yeah. Well,
Thanks for tuning in, everyone.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.